Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're not just going to look at a scorecard. We're going to dissect a really high-pressure situation, the final chapter of a pretty bruising contest. We're diving deep into day 4 of the 5th Ashes Test, 2025-26, at the Sydney Cricket Ground. Now, if you just look at the series score, Australia's already up 4-1. You might think this match is, just academic.
Right, dead rubber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I would argue that day 4 was maybe the most defining psychological day of the entire series.
I agree completely. I think our mission here is to move beyond the numbers. England 302 for 8 at the close and really map out the emotional and strategic landscape.
Yeah.
When a series is already decided, how does a team that's under so much pressure respond? We have to look at the key moments, the individual performances, the little tactical shifts Australia made, and just that crushing weight of it all.
When I look at the whole arc of the day, I keep coming back to this one central conflict. Was this a day where England, through just sheer force of will and one massive performance, showed some genuine, sustainable resilience?
Or was this just a perfect, relentless execution by Australia, where they basically just waited for the inevitable collapse to happen?
Let's unpack this, and I think we have to start with the foundation Australia laid.
You have to.
When day 4 even started, the psychological groundwork had already been set. The first innings totals created this huge canyon of pressure for the English batsmen.
Absolutely.
Australia's 567. That's not just a big score, that's a statement. It says, you will be chasing this game for 4 days.
And England's 384, which on its own is, pretty respectable.
Decent, yeah.
It just highlighted the problem. That 183-run deficit is critical. It dictated every single decision England had to make in their second innings.
So they weren't batting to win?
No, not at all. They were batting to survive, to erase the deficit, and then maybe, just maybe, set some kind of target that need to be conservative to just get through that early spell. It directly leads to the pressure that causes the mistakes later on.
And you have to give credit where it's due. The Australian middle order made that gap enormous. You had two totally different but equally devastating approaches at play.
Exactly. You take Travis Head's aggressive 163. That innings was pure momentum.
He just took the game away from them.
He attacked anything loose, he kept the scoreboard moving at a really high pace, and he forced the English bowlers to constantly chop and change their plans. He was setting the tone, making sure there was just no rest for them.
So Head brings the tempo, the aggression. But then you look at Steve Smith's 138, and it's a masterclass in the exact opposite. It was grinding, it was inevitable, and it must have been soul-destroying to be in the field for that.
Oh, completely. Smith wasn't just scoring runs, he was forcing them into tactical submission. By the time he was past his 100, he had basically taught the English bowlers that a good length and line were kind of pointless against him.
He just controls the game.
He does. He subtly controls the lengths they bowl, exhausting them mentally and physically. So that Blenhead's punch, Smith's grind, it created Australia's whole strategy. Aggression with the bat, discipline with the ball, build a massive buffer. They dictated everything from that point on.
Okay, so Australia builds this monumental target. Now let's shift our focus to England's attempt to mount some sort of defense. And that discussion, it really begins and almost ends with Jacob Bethell. He was like the solitary lighthouse in an absolute gale.
He was, and this is where the story gets genuinely compelling. Bethell produces his maiden test century, finishing the day on, about 142 not out?
Incredible.
In the context of this whole series where English batsmen have looked lost, confused, technically all over the place, this innings stands out as a genuine achievement of character.
The commentators, they just couldn't stop praising his temperament. What did you see, technically or psychologically, that justified that level of praise? Because this wasn't 100 when the pressure was off. This was under immense pressure.
Well, the key for me was his decision-making against quality swing and seam bowling. When Australia's bowlers found their rhythm, especially Scott Boland probing that fourth stump line,
Right.
Bethell didn't chase. He showed immense discipline outside the off-stump, which is exactly what England's top order has failed to do all series.
Their patience.
Patience, but also intent. When the spinners came on, he used his feet well, he stayed balanced, he found gaps. He didn't just survive, he was actively rotating the strike and keeping the pressure off the guys at the other end.
He anchored a lineup that desperately needed one. Without that 142 not out, we wouldn't even be talking about day 5. The game would have been over.
Absolutely, no question. And that's what makes this century so valuable for England, even in a lost series. It's not just the score, it's a signpost for their future.
A bit of hope.
A bit of hope, yeah. It shows they have at least one player who, when the whole system is failing, can stand up, absorb that pressure, and deliver against an elite attack. It gives them a counter-narrative to all the failures.
But that resilience from Bethell, as wonderful as it was, it only seems to highlight the recurring systemic problem for England, doesn't it?
That's the heartbreaking part if you're an England fan. Every single time Bethell managed to build a platform, the structure around him just crumbled.
We've seen it time and again.
It's a pattern, not a coincidence. We saw the consistent collapse of the middle and lower order. And this isn't just about, a technical flaw. It's about internal psychological pressure showing up on the field.
What was the defining moment of that fragility on day 4 for you? The one thing that just screamed chaos.
Oh, the run out of Jamie Smith. It was a perfect example. It wasn't caused by a brilliant piece of fielding or some unplayable delivery.
No, it was self-inflicted.
Total self-inflicted damage. A complete lack of communication, a mix-up over a nothing single. It killed a potential partnership and swung the momentum right back to Australia in an instant.
And beyond the runouts, we also saw more of the same poor shot selection.
Yep. Batsmen feeling the need to break free from Australia's grip, so they start playing these big, expansive shots way too early, trying to hit their way out of trouble instead of just, accumulating runs.
The unnecessary drives.
So many unnecessary drives to balls that should have just been left alone, resulting in edges straight to the slips. It just kept undermining all the good, patient work Bethell was doing.
And then, just when they needed every single resource they had, they lose their captain. We have to talk about the impact of Ben Stokes leaving the field with that adductor issue.
That was a tactical and a moral hammer blow. Stokes' injury meant he couldn't bowl, which, okay, limits your options.
Sure.
But more importantly, his mobility was gone. It affects his captaincy. Captaincy is about energy, about moving your field, about communicating aggression. When your leader is physically struggling, it just reinforces that feeling that you're running on fumes.
So if England's story is one of isolated highs and these crushing lows, Australia's is just a boring, effective textbook on relentless execution.
Yes, exactly.
Let's turn back to their bowling attack. How did they make sure Bethell's heroics never turned into a full-blown English resurgence?
Australia's bowlers are masters of the squeeze. They understood the psychology perfectly. They knew England had one anchor, and their job was to systematically erode everything around him. Their consistency on day 4 was just outstanding.
And who are the key orchestrators of that pressure?
Well, Scott Boland, for one. He's not flashy, but his accuracy is just unrelenting. He bowls these long, tight spells that just dry up the runs. He prevents partnerships from ever getting a rhythm.
So he just holds an end.
He and Michael Neser, they just maintained that relentless line and length, gave away no cheap runs, and basically set up the wickets for the other guys.
So they seal the pressure cooker tight, and then they bring in the partnership breakers.
Precisely. And that's where the depth of Australia's attack really shines. They don't just rely on their big names. Bo Webster, for instance, he stepped up and got crucial breakthroughs late in the day. He targeted that lower middle order with just enough variation to induce the mistakes. He wasn't bowling faster or swinging it more. He was just capitalizing on the exhaustion that Boland and Neser had already created.
So the expert verdict on Australia's day 4 strategy is clear. It was the slow choke.
It was. They executed their strategy superbly. Dominate with the bat, create that overwhelming deficit, squeeze England's batting with relentless consistency, and just ensure every promising partnership was broken before it could become truly dangerous.
And that brings us right to the cliffhanger for day 5. The math at the close of play is incredibly tight. England are 302 for 8. They lead by about 119 with just those 2 wickets left.
It's chaseable, but that's still a decent amount of cricket left to play. It creates a fascinating set of conflicting goals for that morning session.
Australia's goal is pretty simple.
Brutally simple. Get those last 2 wickets and get them fast. They'll exploit any early movement, attack hard from the first ball, and try to keep that target under 130. They want to finish this thing emphatically.
But Test cricket, even when one team is so heavily favored, it always holds that little faint light of hope. What does that light rely on for England?
It rests entirely on Jacob Bethell continuing his heroics and finding some stubborn, completely unexpected resilience from the last two batsmen.
So a miracle.
Pretty much. If he can somehow help add another 30 or 40 runs quickly, suddenly that target creeps past 150, and that introduces a little bit of doubt, a few nerves into the Australian dressing room.
But that would require a huge psychological shift.
It would, and the facts are just stacked against them. Bethel's amazing innings can't erase the batting fragilities we've talked about, and it can't heal their injured captain. The assessment has to be firm. England are heavy, heavy underdogs. It feels less like a contest and more like a final countdown.
So if we step back and summarize the key takeaway for you, the listener, day 4 of this test was really a perfect microcosm of the whole series, wasn't it?
It really was.
You had Australian strategic dominance, building huge totals, deploying relentless pressure, executing perfectly, and that was challenged only by these isolated moments of truly outstanding individual brilliance from England.
And that brings us to the final provocative question that I think goes way beyond this one result. Australia executed their short-term strategy to win this test in the series. But look at Bethell. His century is a story of resilience and future promise, the kind of performance that could suggest a turning point.
Right.
So which factor is strategically more important for the future of the Ashes rivalry? Australia successfully executing their short-term dominance, or Jacob Bethell providing England with a desperately needed long-term signpost for reform? That is the question the English selectors will be mulling over long after the celebrations in Sydney are finished.